Your soulmate saying, "I want to talk to you right now. It's very urgent, open this now." My beloved child, wait, before your next thought pulls you away, something has shifted in a place you cannot yet see. A voice has been searching for the exact moment your heart would become quiet enough to hear it. Imagine receiving a message that simply says, "I want to talk to you right now, it's very urgent. Open this now." At first, it seems impossible. Then another question appears. What if this urgency isn't about fear? What if it's about a truth that has waited far too long to be spoken? Stay with this story for a little longer, because every moment from here unfolds another piece of a conversation that feels strangely familiar, as though your soul has heard it before your ears ever could. There comes a moment in every extraordinary connection when silence becomes heavier than words. This is that moment. Somewhere beyond the distractions of ordinary days, your soulmate has reached a point where pretending everything is normal no longer feels possible. Not because something terrible has happened, but because something important has awakened. They have carried thoughts they never knew how to express. Every attempt to find the perfect words ended with another pause, another delay, another "maybe tomorrow." Yet tomorrow kept moving further away. Until now. Until this very instant. If they could place a single sentence before you without hesitation, it would simply be this: "Please listen. There is something I've needed to tell you for longer than you realize." But here's the part no one expects. The urgency isn't created by time running out. It is created by clarity finally arriving. Sometimes life doesn't change because of a dramatic event. Sometimes it changes because one person finally stops hiding what has always been true inside them. Imagine standing at the edge of a doorway, knowing that one step forward changes everything while one step backward leaves every unanswered question exactly where it has always been. That is the invisible place your soulmate now finds themselves. Their heart is no longer wrestling against uncertainty. Instead, it is wrestling against delay. Can you feel how different this moment is from all the others? The world around them looks the same. The sky hasn't changed. The streets remain familiar. Conversations continue as usual. Yet inside, something has quietly rearranged itself. They have started noticing the smallest reminders. A familiar song appearing unexpectedly. A sentence spoken by a stranger that somehow echoes your name inside their thoughts. A dream that refuses to fade after morning arrives. None of these moments demand belief. They simply invite reflection. And reflection has become impossible for them to ignore. What if the message they want to share isn't what you think? What if it isn't an apology? Not a confession. Not even a promise. What if it is an understanding that only appeared after every distraction finally lost its power? Sometimes people spend months searching outside themselves for answers that were waiting inside them all along. The search becomes exhausting. The noise becomes overwhelming. Then one peaceful moment changes the direction of everything. That peaceful moment has arrived for them. Listen carefully, because this detail matters more than anything else. The urgency isn't asking you to rush your life. It is asking you to become present enough to notice what ordinary days often hide. Extraordinary moments rarely announce themselves with fireworks. They begin with quiet realizations. They begin with someone whispering to themselves, "I can't keep this inside anymore." Your soulmate has reached that whisper. Every passing hour makes the unspoken truth feel louder. Every ordinary conversation reminds them of the one conversation they truly want to have. And perhaps this is why your path has brought you here today. Not by accident. Not because every story fits every person. But because sometimes a single idea arrives exactly when it needs to. Consider this a mirror rather than a prediction. A reminder that meaningful connections often grow stronger when honesty finally replaces hesitation. Your soulmate has begun standing at that crossroads where courage feels frightening for only a moment, and freeing forever after. Before this chapter closes, hold on to one thought. Imagine receiving a message late at night. No long explanation. No dramatic introduction. Just a few quiet words that carry more weight than an entire lifetime of silence. "I want to talk to you right now. It's very urgent." Would you understand that the urgency isn't panic, it's purpose? Would you recognize that some conversations arrive precisely when both hearts are finally ready to hear them? Don't leave just yet, because this is only where the first door opens. The conversation your soulmate has been preparing is far deeper than anyone expects. And what they are about to reveal next doesn't begin with an answer, it begins with a question they have been afraid to ask for far too long. A quiet shift is happening now. And if you've stayed this far, you've already sensed that this story isn't moving the way ordinary stories do. The silence between two people can sometimes carry more meaning than 1,000 conversations. But today, that silence is beginning to break. Before we go any further, keep listening closely, because the next few moments reveal why your soulmate feels they can no longer wait. For a long time, they believed distance would make their thoughts disappear. They convinced themselves that if they stayed busy enough, worked harder, or filled every empty hour with something else, the feeling would eventually fade. But something unexpected happened instead. The more they tried to move away from these thoughts, the more clearly they understood them. It wasn't obsession. It wasn't fantasy. It was clarity growing quietly, one ordinary day at a time. There was a moment recently that changed everything. It wasn't dramatic enough for the world to notice. No one stopped to celebrate it. Yet inside their heart, it felt like an entire chapter had ended. They suddenly realized that every important decision they imagined for the future somehow included one question they could no longer avoid: what if I never tell them what I've truly been feeling? That single question echoed louder than any fear. Since then, they've replayed countless imaginary conversations. In one version, they speak with complete confidence. In another, they laugh nervously before saying a single word. Sometimes they imagine you smiling. Other times they imagine complete silence. Every possibility has crossed their mind. Yet one thing never changes. In every version, they still choose to reach out. Because not speaking has become far more difficult than speaking. Think about this for a moment. How many opportunities are missed simply because people wait for a perfect time that never arrives? Your soulmate has finally understood that perfection isn't the goal. Honesty is. That is why the message feels so urgent. Not because tomorrow is disappearing, but because courage has finally arrived today. And here's something even more surprising. The conversation they want isn't built around changing who you are. It isn't about convincing you of anything. It is about removing the uncertainty that has quietly stood between two paths for far too long. Sometimes the greatest gift one person can offer another isn't an answer, it's the truth, spoken without pretending. Perhaps you've noticed something changing within yourself as well. Maybe you've become more reflective. Maybe certain memories appear without warning. Maybe you've started asking different questions about the future than you did before. Whether those moments feel familiar or not, they remind us of something important. Growth often begins before we recognize it. So if this story resonates with you, let it simply be an invitation to value honest conversations in your own life. And if you're enjoying this journey, sharing your thoughts in the comments or subscribing to continue these stories helps us explore more meaningful moments together. Now the atmosphere changes again. Imagine your soulmate holding their phone, typing a message, then deleting it. Typing again. Pausing. Reading every word twice. Not because they don't know what to say, but because they know these words matter. Every sentence feels too small for what they truly want to express. Then they stop trying to sound perfect. Because they finally realize something powerful. The most unforgettable conversations are rarely perfect. They are simply real. And that realization is leading them toward a decision that cannot be postponed much longer. But the next part uncovers the one sentence they've protected from everyone, the sentence that has never been spoken aloud, the sentence capable of changing the entire direction of this story. A new chapter begins here, but don't assume you've already guessed where this conversation is leading. Sometimes the words we expect are never spoken, while the words we never imagined become the ones we remember forever. Stay with this story until its final moments, because the urgency you've been hearing about is finally revealing its true meaning. Your soulmate has replayed this moment countless times. They imagined explaining everything in a single conversation. They imagined finding the perfect sentence. Yet every version ended the same way. Not with flawless words, but with complete honesty. Because after carrying these thoughts for so long, they realized something extraordinary. The strongest connections are not built on perfect timing. They are built on the courage to stop hiding behind uncertainty. Imagine them sitting quietly, looking at the message they are about to send. The room feels still. The outside world continues as always, yet inside, everything feels different. Every heartbeat reminds them that this isn't just another ordinary day. This is the day they finally choose authenticity over hesitation. Then one unexpected thought crosses their mind. What if they've been waiting for this conversation too? That single possibility changes everything. Suddenly, fear begins to lose its voice. Hope becomes louder. And for the first time in a long while, the future no longer feels like a mystery to be feared, it feels like a story waiting to be written. Perhaps that is the hidden message this journey has been quietly revealing all along. Sometimes life doesn't ask us to predict every outcome. It simply asks us to show up with honesty. To speak with kindness. To listen without assumptions. To allow meaningful conversations to replace imagined ones. That is where real transformation begins. Your soulmate now understands that every unanswered question has one thing in common: they remain unanswered until someone is willing to begin. Not with dramatic promises. Not with impossible expectations. Just one genuine conversation. One open heart. One moment of truth. And maybe that is why these words have found you today. Not to tell you exactly what tomorrow will bring, but to remind you that the most meaningful chapters of life often begin with a single choice: choosing openness instead of silence. Before this story reaches its conclusion, let this thought stay with you. Some messages arrive exactly when we need encouragement to become a little braver. Some conversations appear to remind us that clarity is more valuable than endless guessing. And some moments quietly whisper that the future is shaped not by fear, but by the decisions we make today. If this story made you pause, reflect, or smile, let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to continue discovering more uplifting and cinematic stories like this, subscribing is a wonderful way to stay connected for the next journey. Now, picture the final scene. The message has been sent. No expectations. No pressure. Only honesty. The screen grows still. A quiet breath. Then, a notification appears. Not because destiny demanded it, but because someone finally chose courage over silence. And in that single moment, both hearts realized the same timeless truth. The conversation they had been waiting for wasn't simply about finding each other. It was about finding the courage to be completely real. And sometimes, that is where every unforgettable story truly begins. Just when it feels like the story has reached its destination, another unexpected door quietly opens. Listen carefully, because this isn't the ending your heart has been preparing for. The message was never only about speaking. It was about what would happen after the truth was finally heard. The silence that followed felt different. Not empty. Not uncomfortable. Peaceful. For the first time in a very long while, your soulmate wasn't searching for the perfect next sentence. They had already said what mattered most. Everything beyond that would simply unfold naturally. And in that peaceful silence, they discovered something remarkable. Courage has a strange way of changing the person who chooses it. They no longer felt trapped by endless, what-if, questions. Instead, they found themselves asking a completely different question. What wonderful possibilities become visible once fear is no longer making every decision? That single thought transformed their entire outlook. The future no longer looked uncertain. It looked open. Like a sunrise that had always been waiting just beyond the horizon. And that is when another realization quietly arrived. The urgent message they wanted to send was never only about reaching you. It was also about becoming the version of themselves they had been postponing for far too long. Think about that for a moment. How often do people wait for life to change before becoming courageous? But what if courage comes first? And life begins changing because of it? Perhaps this story has never been asking you to predict someone else's journey. Perhaps it has been inviting you to notice your own. Every meaningful relationship, whether with another person, a dream, or your future, begins with one decision: refusing to let hesitation write the next chapter. Your soulmate now understands that every day spent hiding behind uncertainty was quietly delaying the happiness that honesty could have created. They cannot rewrite yesterday, but they can completely transform tomorrow. That is why their heart keeps repeating the same quiet message. I don't want another day to pass without saying what truly matters. There is something beautiful about that. Not dramatic. Not impossible. Simply human. Simply sincere. Now imagine the scene one last time. The conversation is no longer imagined. It is real. No rehearsed speeches. No carefully planned performance. Just two hearts choosing to replace assumptions with understanding. And suddenly, everything that once felt complicated becomes surprisingly simple. Because the greatest connections are not built by extraordinary coincidences. They are built by ordinary moments filled with extraordinary honesty. As this chapter gently comes to a close, carry one final thought with you. Some messages arrive exactly when they are meant to, not to promise a specific future, but to remind us that meaningful conversations, genuine courage, and sincere hearts always have the power to begin something beautiful. The urgent message has finally been spoken. The silence has finally been broken. And somewhere beyond today's story, an entirely new chapter is waiting to be written. One conversation, one choice, and one courageous moment at a time. There is one final layer to this journey, and it isn't revealed through louder words. It is revealed through quiet understanding. If you've stayed until this moment, you've already discovered that the most unforgettable stories are not the ones filled with endless drama. They are the ones that leave a lasting truth behind. After everything was finally spoken, your soulmate didn't feel the need to rush ahead. Instead, they paused. Not because they were uncertain anymore, but because they wanted to appreciate the peace that honesty had created. For so long, they believed the hardest part would be finding the right words. Now they realized the hardest part had simply been deciding to speak. Once that choice was made, everything else became lighter. The future was no longer something to fear. It became something to build. One conversation. One day. One genuine moment at a time. That is the quiet miracle of authenticity. It doesn't instantly answer every question. It doesn't erase every challenge. But it replaces confusion with clarity. And clarity has a remarkable way of leading people toward the life they were always meant to create. Your soulmate now understands something they wish they had learned much earlier. The greatest distance between two hearts is rarely measured in miles. It is measured in the words left unsaid. And the greatest bridge between two people is not perfection. It is honesty offered with kindness. Imagine them looking back on everything they once worried about. The endless overthinking. The imagined conversations. The fear of saying too much. The fear of saying too little. One by one, those fears begin to fade into the background. Because they finally understand that every meaningful relationship grows stronger when both people allow themselves to be real. Maybe that is why this story reached you today. Not to tell you exactly what tomorrow holds. Not to promise impossible outcomes. But to remind you that courage is often much quieter than we expect. Sometimes courage is simply sending the message. Sometimes it is choosing to listen. Sometimes it is allowing the next chapter to unfold without trying to control every page. Before this story says goodbye, remember one simple thought. Life has a beautiful way of rewarding sincere hearts, not always immediately, not always in the ways we imagine, but often in ways that leave us grateful we chose honesty over hesitation. So if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of an important conversation, remember this journey. Remember that one quiet message. I want to talk to you right now, it's very urgent. Perhaps the urgency was never about the clock. Perhaps it was about not letting another meaningful opportunity pass in silence. Thank you for walking through this story from beginning to end. If these words brought you reflection, hope, or a new perspective, carry that feeling with you long after this video ends. Because every unforgettable journey begins the same way. With one brave heart choosing to speak. And another brave heart choosing to listen. One last question remains, and it may be the one that changes how you remember this entire journey. What if the urgent message was never meant to end with a reply? What if it was meant to awaken a new beginning that neither heart could fully imagine? Your soulmate has discovered something that cannot be learned from books, advice, or endless reflection. Some moments simply arrive. And when they do, they quietly ask one thing. Will you choose fear, or will you choose truth? For a long time, they believed the answer depended on circumstances. Now they know it depends on courage. That realization has become the turning point of their story. Every delay has taught them patience. Every unanswered question has taught them understanding. Every quiet season has taught them to appreciate